But it's for Mittens, I said, gesturing towards the modest cedar-shingled structure in my backyard. It's a cat house. The HOA representative, a young man named Kevin who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, sighed. I understand, Mr. Peterson, but it's an unapproved outdoor structure, and, well, it detracts. Detracts? I repeated, incredulous. From what? The pristine view of my meticulously mowed lawn? I, George Peterson, was not usually one for confrontation. I preferred a quiet life, filled with books, gardening, and the companionship of my beloved cat, Mittens. And yes, before you ask, she does have mittens, adorable little white paws. But this was ridiculous. My cat house was causing problems? It was a perfectly reasonable, well-built little shelter designed to give Mittens a safe and comfortable place to hang out when she ventured outdoors. It wasn't some garish monstrosity. It was practically a miniature version of my own house. And it was tucked away in a corner of the yard, barely visible from the street. We are in Pristine Pines, by the way. This whole mess started, as most HOA conflicts do, with a notice. But to understand the notice, you need to understand Mittens. I hadn't planned on getting a cat. I'd always considered myself more of a contemplative solitude kind of guy. But then Mittens showed up, a tiny, bedraggled ball of fluff, abandoned in the park near my house. I took her in, intending to find her a good home. But, well, she kind of grew on me. She became my cat, my furry little companion, my purring, head-butting, occasionally scratching shadow. And I, in turn, became her devoted human servant. So when she started showing an interest in the outdoors, I naturally wanted to make sure she was safe and comfortable. Hence, the cat house. A simple, cedar-shingled structure with a cozy bed inside, a small scratching post, and a little overhang to protect her from the elements. It wasn't exactly the Taj Mahal, but it was perfect for Mittens. The HOA representative, Kevin, was still standing there, looking increasingly uncomfortable. The complaint, he continued, is that it's an unapproved outdoor structure, and that it detracts from the neighborhood aesthetic, and that it might attract unwanted animals? Unwanted animals? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Like squirrels, birds, other cats? Kevin winced. Well, yes, and potentially others. I stared at him, trying to process the absurdity of it all. My cat house, a haven for my cat, was a threat to the delicate sensibilities of Pristine Pines. There wasn't a single rule saying I couldn't have a cat house. I was starting to get that familiar feeling, the one that usually preceded a major HOA headache, a mixture of confusion, annoyance, and a growing sense of injustice. This wasn't just about a cat house. It was about control. It was about the HOA, and specifically, I suspected, one particular member of the HOA flexing its power for no good reason. The HOA meeting was, as expected, a masterclass in bureaucratic pettiness. It was held in the Pristine Pines Community Center, a room that seemed to have been designed to inspire conformity. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige furniture. Even the air seemed beige. The board members sat at a long table, looking like a collection of judgmental garden gnomes. And then there was Brenda Biggins, the president of the Pristine Pines HOA and the undisputed queen of passive-aggressive rule enforcement. She was a woman of a certain age, with a tightly permed hairstyle, a wardrobe that consisted primarily of pastel-colored pantsuits, and an expression that suggested she'd just smelled something unpleasant. And I was pretty sure she hated cats. I'd heard rumors, a traumatic childhood experience involving a scratching post, a rogue hairball, a prized collection of porcelain figurines. I didn't know the details, but the animosity was palpable. "Mr. Peterson," Brenda began, her voice sharp and accusatory, "your cat house has been brought to our attention." She said cat house as if it were a brothel for felines. "It's a shelter, Miss Biggins," I corrected, trying to keep my voice calm. "For my cat, Mittens. She likes to spend time outdoors, and it gives her a safe place to rest." "It's unsightly, Mr. Peterson," Brenda declared, her eyes narrowing. "It's unnecessary, and it sets a dangerous precedent. What's next? Dog mansions? Parrot palaces? We can't have this neighborhood turning into a menagerie." "It's a small wooden structure, Brenda," I said, my patience wearing thin. "It's tucked away in a corner of my yard. It's hardly visible from the street." "It's a slippery slope, Mr. Peterson," Brenda insisted. "Today it's a cat house. Tomorrow it's feral cat colonies. Hordes of stray cats roaming the streets, terrorizing our prize-winning petunias." She shuddered dramatically. I'm pretty sure she was making this all up. I pointed out the lack of specific rules against cat houses in the bylaws. I explained that Mittens was a well-behaved indoor-outdoor cat, not a feral menace. I even offered to paint the cat house beige to match the depressing aesthetic of the community center. The other board members mostly just sat there, looking bored or uncomfortable. Except for one, a woman with a kind smile and a suspiciously cat-shaped brooch on her lapel. I suspected she might be a closet cat lover. But Brenda? She was unmoved. "The cat house," she declared, slamming her surprisingly small gavel on the table, "must be removed. You have 2 weeks, Mr. Peterson, and you are hereby fined $100 for violating the aesthetic harmony of pristine pines." Aesthetic harmony? It was a cat house. I walked out of that meeting, my blood boiling, my sense of injustice reaching critical levels. Brenda Biggins had declared war on Mittens and on me. And I, George Peterson, was not about to surrender. 2 weeks. That's all the time Brenda Biggins, in her infinite, cat-hating wisdom, had given me to dismantle Mittens' perfectly reasonable, perfectly charming little cat house. 2 weeks, or I'd face further action, which, knowing Brenda, probably meant fines, liens, and possibly even a SWAT team raid to confiscate my unauthorized outdoor structure. I, of course, refused. I sent a polite but firm email to the HOA, stating my intention to keep the cat house, citing, again, the lack of specific rules against it, and emphasizing Mittens' right to a comfortable outdoor shelter. The response I received was swift and predictable. A threatening letter, printed on official HOA letterhead, beige, naturally, informing me that I was in direct violation of community guidelines, that my continued non-compliance would result in escalating fines, and that they were prepared to take all necessary steps to ensure the removal of the offending structure. "Necessary steps," I muttered, crumpling the letter in my fist. What are they going to do? Send in the cat house demolition squad? It was outrageous. It was absurd. It was war. They weren't just attacking a cat house. They were attacking Mittens, my sweet, innocent, fluffy-pawed companion. And that I could not abide. I felt a surge of righteous indignation, a burning desire to fight back, to defend my feline friend's right to a comfortable nap spot. But I also felt helpless. What could I do? I was just one man, up against the all-powerful, all-beige HOA. My weapon of choice, as always, was the HOA bylaws. That night, armed with a highlighter, a pot of coffee, and a burning sense of injustice, I delved into the document, determined to find a way, any way, to keep Mittens' house, and simultaneously drive Brenda Biggins completely insane. I read through sections on landscaping, fence heights, paint colors, garbage can placement, and even the acceptable number of garden gnomes. Apparently, there is a limit. I was starting to lose hope. Everything was so specific, so restrictive, so beige. And then I saw it. Tucked away in a section titled Accessory Structures was a clause regulating the size and materials of sheds, gazebos, and other outbuildings. It specified maximum height, square footage, and acceptable building materials, and this was the key, it said nothing about the purpose of the structure. There were no specific rules against structures built for pets, as long as they met the building codes for human structures. The wording was vague, ambiguous, open to interpretation. A slow smile spread across my face. Accessory structure, I muttered. Oh, I'll give them an accessory structure. The seed of an idea, a gloriously ridiculous idea, was starting to sprout. The plan, when it fully formed in my mind, was so audacious, so over the top, so utterly cat-tastic that I almost laughed out loud. I couldn't remove the existing cat house. Fine, but what if I expanded it? What if I built something so grand, so luxurious, so undeniably feline, that it would make Brenda Biggins's head explode? I wouldn't build a cat house. I would build a feline mansion. It would be an accessory structure, of course. Technically, it would meet all the HOA's size and material requirements, but it would be more, much, much more. I envisioned multiple levels, connected by ramps and staircases, balconies for sunbathing, cozy enclosed sleeping areas lined with plush cushions, scratching posts galore, towers for climbing, maybe even a miniature catio, an enclosed outdoor space where mittens could enjoy the fresh air without, disrupting the neighborhood aesthetic. It would be built with high-quality materials, cedar, redwood, maybe even some decorative stone. It would be a palace fit for a queen, or, in this case, a slightly spoiled but very loved cat. And I would argue, with a perfectly straight face, that it was simply a very, very elaborate pet shelter, an accessory structure designed to meet the needs of my beloved companion. I could already picture Brenda's reaction, the sputtering outrage, the vein throbbing in her forehead, the inevitable meltdown. It was a beautiful image. I knew it was ridiculous. I knew it was probably going to cost me a fortune. But I didn't care. This wasn't just about a cat house anymore. It was about principle. It was about fighting back against petty tyranny. It was mostly about annoying Brenda Biggins. And that, I decided, was a cause worth fighting for. Operation Feline Fortress was a go. And Mittens, whether she knew it or not, was about to become the most pampered cat in Pristine Pines. Finding a contractor willing to build a feline mansion proved to be interesting. My first few calls were met with stunned silence, followed by polite, and sometimes not so polite, refusals. Apparently, most builders are more accustomed to constructing garages and decks, not multi-level palaces for pampered pets. Then I found him. Bob, a different Bob, thankfully, than previous HOA stories. Bob ran a small company specializing in custom pet structures. He didn't just build dog houses, he built dog estates. He didn't just build cat trees, he built cat kingdoms. He was, in short, the perfect man for the job. So, let me get this straight, Bob said, looking over my rather detailed sketches of the proposed feline mansion. You want a cat house, but giant and luxurious and HOA-proof? Exactly, I said, nodding enthusiastically. Think. Versailles for cats. Multiple levels, ramps, balconies, scratching posts everywhere, heated sleeping areas, the works. And it has to meet all the building codes for a human dwelling because, well, it's technically an accessory structure. Bob chuckled. You're serious, aren't you? Dead serious, I said. I have a situation with my HOA, and this is my solution. I explained the whole saga of the cat house, the fine Brenda Biggins, and my burning desire for a little bit of feline-flavored revenge. Bob listened intently, his eyes widening with each detail. When I was finished, he grinned. "Mr. Peterson," he said, "you are my kind of crazy. I'm in. This is going to be the most epic cat house ever built." And so, construction began. The first delivery was lumber, lots and lots of lumber. Cedar, redwood, enough to build a small cabin, which I suppose is essentially what we were doing. Then came the stone, the roofing tiles, the windows, small cat-sized windows, of course, and a truckload of cat furniture, scratching posts that looked like miniature trees, plush beds in every conceivable shape and size, climbing towers that reached towards the sky. The neighbors, predictably, were intrigued. They gathered on their lawns, watching the construction with a mixture of shock, amusement, disbelief, and a growing sense of, "What in the world is that man doing? Is he building a treehouse?" I heard one whisper. "It looks like a dollhouse," another said. "A very large dollhouse." "I heard it's for his cat," a third said, her voice laced with disbelief. The construction process was a whirlwind of activity. Hammers banged, saws whirred, and Bob, the master builder, orchestrated the whole thing with the precision of a seasoned conductor. The mansion rose from the ground, level by level, a testament to feline luxury and HOA defiance. There were ramps connecting the different levels, balconies overlooking my, and more importantly, Karen's, yard, cozy nooks and crannies for napping, and scratching posts strategically placed throughout. We even built a catio, an enclosed outdoor space, complete with climbing structures and a miniature cat-sized fountain. Take that, Karen. I, of course, supervised the entire operation, making sure every detail was perfect. I insisted on heated floors in the sleeping areas. Mittens gets cold in the winter, you know. I demanded extra-large windows. She likes to birdwatch. And I personally selected the color scheme for the interior, a calming blend of blues and greens to complement Mitten's white fur naturally. My internal monologue was a constant stream of giddy anticipation. "Wait until Brenda sees this," I muttered to myself over and over again. "She's going to lose it." I pictured her face, contorted with rage, her perfectly coiffed hair standing on end. It was a beautiful image. There was one minor hiccup. A visit from a rather bewildered HOA inspector, not Brenda, thankfully. She was probably still recovering from the shock of the building permit I'd obtained. "Mr. Peterson," he said, staring up at the towering structure. "What exactly is this?" "It's an accessory structure," I said with a perfectly straight face. "For my cat?" He blinked. "Your cat?" "Yes," I said, nodding. "She needs a lot of space." He looked at the mansion, then at the bylaws, then back at me. He clearly had no idea what to do. "As long as it meets building codes," he mumbled, trailing off. "It does," I assured him. "All permits approved, all regulations followed. It's perfectly legal?" He shook his head, muttered something about never seeing anything like this before, and retreated, looking utterly defeated. And so the construction continued. And as the feline mansion neared completion, I felt a growing sense of satisfaction. It was more than just a cat house. It was a statement, a symbol of resistance, a testament to the lengths a man would go to for his beloved pet, and to annoy a particularly unpleasant HOA president. It was ridiculous. It was over the top. It was perfect. And Mittens, who'd been watching the whole process with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain, she's a cat, after all, seemed to approve. She even deigned to rub against one of the newly installed scratching posts, a sure sign of feline favor. The stage was set, The mansion was ready. And I, George Peterson, was prepared for the inevitable explosion. Brenda's arrival was, shall we say, dramatic. She didn't just knock on my door. She practically attacked it, pounding on it with such force that I half expected the hinges to give way. I opened the door, a picture of calm innocence, a look I'd been practicing in the mirror, and found myself face to face with a woman on the verge of a complete and utter meltdown. "What?" she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that shattered a nearby bird bath. Okay, maybe not, but it was close. "Have you done?" She pointed a trembling finger towards my backyard, where the Feline mansion stood in all its glorious, over-the-top splendor. "Good afternoon, Brenda," I said, my voice smooth and even. "You're referring, I presume, to my new accessory structure?" "Accessory structure?" she sputtered, her face turning a shade of purple that I'd previously only associated with particularly angry cartoon characters. "It's a cat palace. It's outrageous." "It's for Mittens," I said with a shrug. She needed a more spacious accommodation, and as you can see, it's perfectly compliant with the HOA bylaws. Section on accessory structures, remember? Size and materials are all within the guidelines. But it's a mansion," she stammered, her eyes bulging. "For a cat." "She's a very discerning cat," I said deadpan. "She has refined tastes." I then proceeded to give her a tour of the mansion's features, highlighting its many luxurious amenities. "See here?" I said, pointing to the multi-level design. "Plenty of space for exercise and exploration. And over here, we have the heated sleeping areas. Gotta keep Mittens warm on those chilly nights, you know." I showed her the scratching posts, the balconies, the ramps, the catio with its miniature fountain. I even demonstrated the cat elevator, a small motorized platform that carried Mittens from the ground floor to the roof because why not? Brenda's reaction was priceless. She sputtered, she stammered, she shook her fist, she threatened, but mostly she just looked utterly defeated. The sheer absurdity of the situation, the blatant yet technically legal defiance of my feline mansion, had broken her. This is insane," she finally managed to choke out. I'll have this thing torn down, you'll see." She turned and stomped off, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly askew, her pastel pantsuit looking distinctly rumpled. The emergency HOA meeting, part 2, because apparently one meltdown wasn't enough, was, if possible, even more chaotic than the first. Brenda, looking like she hadn't slept in days, probably because she'd been too busy plotting my demise, presented her case with the fervor of a prosecutor trying a capital murder case. This feline monstrosity," she declared, her voice shaking with emotion, "is an affront to everything Pristine Pines stands for. It's a blight on our landscape. It's a catastrophe." She went on to cite everything from aesthetic concerns, "it's hideous," to potential property value decreases. Who will want to live next to a cat palace? To the possibility of attracting feral cats, hordes of them. She even claimed that the mansion was a safety hazard, suggesting that it might collapse and injure someone, presumably her. Then it was my turn. "Miss Biggins," I began, addressing the board with a calm, reasonable demeanor. That was, of course, entirely fake. Seems to be under the impression that I've built this structure solely to annoy her. While I admit that is a delightful side effect, my primary motivation was to provide a safe and comfortable environment for my beloved cat, Mittens. I then proceeded to present my defense. I cited the bylaws, again. I showed them the building permits, all properly obtained. I presented evidence of the mansion's compliance with all relevant building codes. And, just for good measure, I brought Mittens herself to the meeting. Mittens, bless her fluffy little heart, was the perfect ambassador for feline rights. She sat calmly on my lap, purring contentedly, occasionally batting at a toy I'd brought along. She even, at one point, yawned dramatically, as if to express her utter boredom with Brenda's ranting. The other board members were, to put it mildly, divided. Some were clearly still under Brenda's sway, nodding along to her every accusation. Others looked confused, overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the situation. And a few, I suspected, were secretly admiring my audacity and Mittens's undeniable cuteness. Then, a man from the back of the room stood up. He was a local veterinarian, Dr. Miller, no relation, thankfully, who lived down the street. "I've examined Mr. Peterson's feline mansion," he said, his voice calm and professional. "And I have to say it's one of the most impressive pet shelters I've ever seen. It's well built, safe, and provides ample space and enrichment for the cat. In fact," he added with a slight smile, "I'd say it's far better than many human homes I've seen." That was the final blow. The board, facing a potential lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, and the undeniable evidence of Mittens' contentment, voted to take no action. The meeting ended in chaos, with Brenda screaming about injustice and cat-loving lunatics, and me, George Peterson, the accidental feline revolutionary, emerging victorious. But Brenda, like a particularly persistent hairball, wouldn't give up. What followed was a period of escalating absurdity that I can only describe as the mansion war. Brenda, obsessed with getting rid of the feline mansion, tried every tactic she could think of. She filed complaints with the city, claiming it was a zoning violation, a safety hazard, and an eyesore. The city inspectors came, they inspected, and they found nothing. The mansion was perfectly legal. She tried to turn the neighbors against me, going door to door, armed with a petition and a sob story about how my cat palace was ruining the neighborhood. The petition failed miserably. Most people either laughed in her face or politely told her to leave them alone. She even, I suspect, attempted some minor acts of sabotage. I found a few scratches on the mansion's exterior, easily buffed out, and a suspicious-looking pile of birdseed near the catio. Apparently she was hoping to attract a flock of, what, cat-eating birds? Of course, I had security cameras everywhere, capturing her every move, and I, of course, responded in kind. Not with vandalism, oh no, I was above that. I responded with enhancements. I added a catwalk that extended from the mansion around the entire perimeter of my house, giving Mittens a bird's-eye view of the neighborhood, and specifically, of Brenda's backyard. I installed a cat elevator, a small motorized platform that carried Mittens from the ground floor to the roof of the mansion. Because why not? I created a cat garden filled with catnip, catmint, and other feline-friendly plants. It was a veritable paradise for Mittens and a constant source of irritation for Brenda. And because I couldn't resist, I hosted a grand opening party for the feline mansion. I invited all the neighbors, except Brenda, naturally, put up decorations, cat-themed of course, and even hired a local musician to play some cat-themed music. The local news showed up, filming a segment about the ultimate cat house and the HOA feud that went too far. It was a glorious, ridiculous, utterly over-the-top spectacle. And Brenda? She just got angrier, and more desperate, and more defeated. The feline mansion stood tall, a monument to one man's love for his cat, and a testament to the power of creative and slightly unhinged resistance. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and I was enjoying a perfectly peaceful morning on my porch swing, a cup of coffee in hand, and a good book in my lap. Life was good. Maybe too good, because that's usually when the universe decides to throw a curveball. Or, in this case, a Karen. I saw her coming down the street, her perfectly coiffed hair bobbing with each determined step, a crisp white envelope clutched in her manicured hand. It was like watching a predator stalking its prey, except instead of a lioness on the savannah, it was Karen from the HOA, and instead of a gazelle, it was my porch swing. Oh, joy, I muttered to myself, setting down my coffee. The fun police have arrived. Karen stopped at the bottom of my porch steps, her smile as sweet as arsenic. "Good morning, Alexander," she chirped, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Lovely day, isn't it?" "It was," I said dryly, "until about 5 seconds ago." She ignored my sarcasm, her smile widening. "I have something for you," she said, holding out the envelope. "From the HOA." I took the envelope, the paper practically radiating suburban disapproval. "Let me guess," I said, already knowing the answer. "My petunias are the wrong shade of pink?" Karen's smile faltered. "No, it's about your porch swing." "My porch swing?" I feigned surprise. What could possibly be wrong with my porch swing? "Well," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "according to the community guidelines, it's unsightly." I burst out laughing. "Unsightly? Seriously? Have you seen Mr. Henderson's collection of garden gnomes? They look like they're planning a hostile takeover of the neighborhood." Karen's smile tightened. "That's different," she said stiffly. "Those are decorative. Your swing is just there." "And my swing isn't decorative?" I gestured to the swing with its colorful cushions and hand-carved frame. "I'll have you know I spent hours picking out the perfect shade of turquoise to match my wind chimes." Karen's eye twitched. "It's not about the color, Alexander," she said, her voice rising. "It's about uniformity. Your swing disrupts the aesthetic flow of the neighborhood." "Aesthetic flow?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Karen, this isn't a museum. It's a neighborhood. And last I checked, there wasn't a rule that said everyone had to have identical porches." "Well, there should be," she snapped. "And until there is, your swing has to go." She thrust the violation notice into my hand, spun on her heel, and marched off, her perfectly coiffed hair bobbing with indignation. I glanced down at the notice, its crisp white paper a harbinger of suburban doom. "Unsightly," it declared, "and not in line with community uniformity." "Uniformity," I muttered, my inner monologue kicking into overdrive. "Right, because nothing says community like a bunch of identical houses with identical lawns and identical porch furniture. Maybe we should all wear matching jumpsuits too, while we're at it." A slow, mischievous grin spread across my face. "Fine," I said to myself, a spark of defiance igniting in my eyes. "You want uniformity, Karen? I'll give you uniformity, but it'll be my kind of uniformity." A plan began to form in my mind. A plan so audacious, so ridiculous, so gloriously petty, that it would make Karen's perfectly coiffed hair stand on end. Armed with my trusty camera and a healthy dose of righteous indignation, I embarked on a photographic safari through the wilds of suburbia. My mission? To document the myriad ways in which my neighbors were violating the HOA's sacred aesthetic flow. First stop, Mr. Henderson's house. Now, Mr. Henderson is a perfectly nice man, but his taste in lawn ornaments is questionable. His front yard is home to a collection of garden gnomes that would make Snow White blush. There's a gnome fishing, a gnome reading a newspaper, a gnome pushing a gnome in a wheelbarrow. There's even a gnome sitting on a miniature toilet, reading a miniature book. And they're worried about my swing? I muttered, snapping a picture of the gnome tableau. Next up, Mrs. Peterson's plastic flamingo flock. They're pink, they're plastic, and they're terrifying. They stand in her flower bed, their beady eyes staring blankly into the void, their long necks swaying ominously in the breeze. I'm pretty sure they multiply when no one's looking. Seriously, a flock of plastic flamingos is okay, but a porch swing is where they draw the line? I shook my head, snapping another picture. Then there's the McGregor's lawn fountain. It's a monstrosity of marble and cherubs, complete with cascading water and underwater lighting. It looks like it belongs in a Roman bathhouse, not a suburban front yard. I half expected to see Caesar emerge from the bushes, wrapped in a toga and demanding grapes. By the time I finished my tour, I had a photo album that could single-handedly dismantle the HOA's entire argument. Armed with this visual arsenal, I marched back to the HOA office, ready to confront Karen and her reign of aesthetic terror. I found her in her usual spot, perched behind her desk like a queen on her throne. "Karen," I began, my voice deceptively calm. "I'd like to discuss my violation notice." "Ah, yes," she said, her smile as sharp as a shard of glass. "The porch swing? I trust you've removed it?" "Not exactly," I said, placing my photo album on her desk. "I've been doing some research on the neighborhood's aesthetic flow, as you call it." Karen's smile faltered as she flipped through the photos. The gnomes, the flamingos, the fountain, they all seemed to mock her from the pages of the album. "What is the meaning of this?" she sputtered, her voice laced with indignation. "I'm just trying to understand the HOA's logic," I said innocently. "These decorative elements are perfectly acceptable, but my swing is a violation? It seems inconsistent." Karen slammed the album shut. "Those are different," she declared. "Those are personal choices. Your swing is a blatant disregard for community standards." "Community standards?" I scoffed. "Karen, the only standard I see here is your personal vendetta against anything remotely enjoyable." "I am simply upholding the rules," she said stiffly. "Rules are rules." "Rules?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or Karen's personal whims. I'm starting to think you were swapped at birth with a robot programmed for suburban domination." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You will remove that swing, Alexander," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Or face the consequences." "Consequences?" I chuckled. "Bring it on, Karen. I'm not afraid of your rules, and I'm certainly not afraid of your plastic flamingos." I turned and walked out, leaving Karen fuming in her beige-colored office. The battle lines had been drawn, and I, armed with my camera and my unwavering sense of defiance, was ready for war. Back in my lair, aka my living room, I let my imagination run wild. Forget a simple porch swing. I was going to create a relaxation haven that would make the Hanging Gardens of Babylon look like a roadside rest stop. "It won't just be a treehouse," I declared to my reflection in the microwave door. "Hey, don't judge my interior design choices." "It'll be a statement. A middle finger to the HOA, disguised as a cozy haven. I envisioned a magnificent structure nestled amongst the branches of my ancient oak tree. It would have multiple levels, a wraparound porch, and maybe even a secret escape hatch. You know, for when Karen inevitably tries to storm the treehouse. It would be the ultimate expression of my defiance, a monument to my love of comfort and my disdain for petty rules. With my vision firmly in mind, I set out to find the right team for the job. This was no ordinary construction project. This was an act of rebellion, a masterpiece of passive aggression disguised as carpentry. I needed more than just builders. I needed fellow revolutionaries. I found them in a group of eccentric carpenters and treehouse specialists who called themselves the Branch Warriors. They were a motley crew, with more tattoos and piercings than your average construction crew, but their eyes lit up when they saw my plans. "This is ambitious," said the leader, a woman with a shaved head and a nose ring the size of a nickel. "Ambitious?" I scoffed. "This is an act of war, disguised as a backyard renovation." "I like your style," she grinned, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the challenge. "We're in." The branch warriors descended upon my backyard like a band of merry rebels. They climbed trees, measured branches, and debated the merits of different types of wood with the passion of philosophers. "We'll use redwood for the main structure," the leader declared. "It's sturdy, sustainable, and it has a nice, rebellious reddish hue." "Excellent choice," I nodded. "We'll make Karen see red." They looked at my plans, and I swear I saw a spark of rebellion in their eyes. We were about to build more than just a treehouse. We were building a revolution. One plank, one nail, one strategically placed hammock at a time. The branch warriors were true to their name. They worked with the precision of surgeons and the creativity of artists, transforming my backyard into a scene straight out of a whimsical fairy tale. The treehouse rose majestically from the branches of the old oak, its wooden frame a testament to their skill and my spite. "This is amazing!" I exclaimed, watching as they installed a swinging rope bridge leading to the main entrance. "It's like something out of an Indiana Jones movie, but with less snakes and more comfortable seating." "Safety first," the leader winked, securing the last knot. "Wouldn't want any HOA inspectors falling to their doom. Though it would be a shame if they tripped over a strategically placed garden gnome." The interior of the treehouse was even more impressive. They'd created a cozy seating area with plush cushions and soft blankets, perfect for curling up with a good book or plotting the downfall of the HOA. There was a hammock strung across one corner, ideal for afternoon naps or contemplating the absurdity of suburban life. "And of course, no treehouse lounge would be complete without a minibar," I announced, unveiling a fully stocked bar cart complete with an ice bucket and cocktail shaker. "Priorities, people." The branch warriors raised their glasses, filled with sparkling cider, it was still morning after all, in a toast. To comfort, defiance, and the pursuit of petty perfection. But the pièce de résistance, the ultimate act of defiance, was the swing. Not just any swing, mind you, but a magnificent hanging swing, suspended from the ceiling of the treehouse. It was larger, more comfortable, and infinitely more satisfying than the banished porch swing. "Take that, Karen," I muttered, settling into the swing with a triumphant grin. "You can take away my porch swing, but you can't take away my swing." As a final touch, I commissioned a wooden sign from a local artisan. It depicted a cartoon caricature of Karen, her face contorted in a mask of disapproval, with the words "Karen's Retreat" emblazoned beneath it. I hung it proudly above the entrance to the treehouse. "It's the perfect blend of passive aggression and blatant mockery," I chuckled. "I'm practically a petty artist." The treehouse was complete. It was a sanctuary of relaxation, a monument to defiance, and a masterpiece of petty revenge. And it was all thanks to Karen and her ridiculous rules. The news of my treehouse spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. It was like I'd suddenly become the most popular kid on the block, except instead of trading baseball cards, I was offering free access to a treehouse lounge. Friends, neighbors, and even their kids started flocking to my backyard, drawn to the allure of the ultimate hangout spot. My porch swing, once the object of Karen's scorn, was now relegated to a mere afterthought. The treehouse was the new epicenter of suburban cool. "This is awesome," I overheard one kid tell another. "It's like a real-life treehouse. I can't believe I'm actually in it." "It's like having my own private club," I mused, watching them frolic among the branches, "but with better snacks and less pretentiousness." The word rental fee might seem out of place in this tale of suburban rebellion, but let's be honest. Building and maintaining a treehouse isn't cheap. And besides, I'm a man of principle, not a charity case. So when a group of teenagers approached me about renting the treehouse for their backyard party, I saw an opportunity. "Sure," I said, feigning nonchalance. "But there are a few rules." I laid out my terms: no underage drinking, no smoking, and no littering. I also made it clear that any damage to the treehouse would be charged to their parents' credit cards. "We'll be good," the group leader assured me, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "We just want a place to hang out and have some fun." They paid me a reasonable fee, and I watched them disappear into the treehouse, the sound of their laughter echoing through the branches. As I watched them, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. My little treehouse had become a haven for the neighborhood kids, a place where they could escape the pressures of suburban life and just be kids. And the best part? Karen knew nothing about it. She was probably still stewing in her anger, unaware that her attempt to silence me had only made me louder. It was a sweet victory, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge is living your life unapologetically. It was only a matter of time before Karen discovered my arboreal masterpiece. I was enjoying a leisurely afternoon in the treehouse, sipping a mojito and contemplating the meaning of life, or maybe just trying to remember where I put the remote, when I heard the unmistakable sound of Karen's voice, sharp and shrill, cutting through the peaceful afternoon like a rusty chainsaw. "Alexander!" she shrieked, her voice laced with a potent blend of fury and indignation. "What have you done?" I peered down from the treehouse balcony, a smirk playing on my lips. Karen was standing in my backyard, her face a symphony of rage. Her eyes were bulging, her cheeks were flushed, and her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to be trembling with anger. I thought she was going to spontaneously combust. It was like watching a volcano erupt, but with more pearl clutching. "Good afternoon, Karen," I said calmly, taking a sip of my mojito. "Lovely day, isn't it?" "Lovely day," she sputtered, her voice reaching a new octave. "My eyes are bleeding. The neighborhood is in chaos. Children are swinging from the trees like monkeys, and that monstrosity," she gestured wildly at the treehouse, "is an abomination." "Monstrosity?" I feigned offense. "Karen, this is a masterpiece, a testament to human ingenuity and the pursuit of relaxation." "Relaxation?" she shrieked. "It's an eyesore. It disrupts the neighborhood aesthetic. It's a violation." "Actually," I said, leaning against the railing, "it's not. You see, Karen, the HOA's rules only apply to the front of the property. The backyard is a free-for-all, a haven for nonconformists and treehouse enthusiasts." Karen's face contorted in a mask of disbelief. That's preposterous." "Checkmate, Karen," I said, savoring the moment. "Looks like someone needs to brush up on their HOA regulations." She sputtered, speechless for once. I took another sip of my mojito, enjoying the sweet taste of victory. Karen, the queen of conformity, had been dethroned, and it was glorious. You, she stammered, finally finding her voice. "You'll regret this, Alexander. I'll find a way to shut down your treehouse of terror." "I'd like to see you try, Karen," I chuckled. "But in the meantime, feel free to admire the view. It's quite lovely from up here." With that, I retreated back into the treehouse, leaving Karen fuming below. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. I knew Karen wouldn't give up so easily, but I was ready for her. I had my treehouse, my mojito, and my unwavering sense of defiance. And that, I knew, was all I needed to win. The HOA, bless their bureaucratic hearts, weren't about to admit defeat. If they couldn't get me on aesthetic violations, they'd try a different tactic. Safety. A new notice arrived, this one even more official-looking than the last, declaring my treehouse a potential safety hazard and demanding a thorough inspection. Amateurs, I scoffed, tossing the notice onto the growing pile of HOA correspondence. Did they really think I wouldn't see this coming? I'd anticipated this move from the moment I'd conceived of Karen's retreat. The branch warriors, in addition to being master treehouse builders, were also sticklers for safety. They'd used only the strongest materials, reinforced every joint, and even consulted with an arborist to ensure the tree itself could handle the weight of the structure. I'd also hired a certified engineer to inspect the treehouse and provide a detailed report confirming its structural integrity. "I'm 2 steps ahead of them," I muttered, pulling out a folder overflowing with documents. "I've got safety certificates, building permits, and even a signed affidavit from a squirrel confirming the treehouse's stability. Okay, maybe not the squirrel part, but you get the idea." The HOA inspectors arrived, armed with clipboards and frowns, ready to find any fault they could. They poked and prodded, measured and scrutinized, but they couldn't find a single violation. The treehouse was, much to their chagrin, perfectly safe. "Well," one inspector grumbled, "it's certainly sturdy." "Sturdy and defiant," I corrected, offering them a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Would you like some? They're Karen approved." They declined. The HOA's failed inspection had an unexpected side effect. It inspired my neighbors. They saw my treehouse, a symbol of defiance against the HOA's tyranny, and they wanted in on the action. Soon, treehouses began popping up all over the neighborhood. Mr. Henderson built a gnome-themed treehouse village, complete with a miniature drawbridge and a moat filled with plastic flamingos. Mrs. Peterson constructed a Victorian-style treehouse with lace curtains and a balcony overlooking her, still terrifying, flamingo flock. Even grumpy Mr. McGregor built a minimalist treehouse, a stark cube of wood perched high in the branches, a surprising departure from his usual Roman bathhouse aesthetic. The neighborhood transformed into a whimsical treehouse village, a testament to the collective spirit of rebellion against the HOA's oppressive regime. It was like a suburban Ewok village, but with less fur and more lawn gnomes. Karen, of course, was horrified. Her vision of a perfectly uniform neighborhood, where every house and every lawn conformed to her rigid standards, was crumbling before her eyes. The treehouses, with their playful designs and blatant disregard for conformity, were a constant reminder of her defeat. "This is madness!" she shrieked to anyone who would listen. "The neighborhood is turning into a jungle!" But her cries fell on deaf ears. The residents had tasted freedom. The freedom to express themselves. The freedom to build tree houses. The freedom to defy Karen's tyranny. And they weren't about to give it up. Karen, bless her rigid, power-hungry soul, wasn't going down without a fight. She called an emergency HOA meeting, her voice dripping with urgency and thinly veiled threats of impending doom. The agenda: a proposed ban on all backyard structures, specifically targeting the scourge of treehouses that had dared to invade her preciously uniform neighborhood. "She's like a broken record, stuck on the ban button," I muttered, receiving the meeting notice. "Someone needs to introduce her to the concept of chill." But I wasn't worried. This wasn't just about me and my treehouse anymore. It was about the entire neighborhood, the collective spirit of defiance that had taken root and blossomed into a canopy of arboreal awesomeness. We were ready for Karen's final stand. The meeting was packed. Residents filled the community center, their faces a mixture of anticipation and amusement. Karen stood at the front, her expression grim, her eyes darting nervously as she surveyed the crowd. She looked like a general about to face a mutiny. I arrived fashionably late, dressed in full camping gear, complete with a backpack, hiking boots, and a pith helmet. I carried a thermos of coffee in one hand and a "I Heart My Treehouse" mug in the other. I took my seat in the front row, directly facing Karen, and gave her a cheerful salute. "Ready for battle, Karen?" I whispered, taking a loud slurp of coffee. She glared at me, her eyes burning with 1,000 HOA violations, but I could see the fear behind her anger. She was losing control, and she knew it. The meeting commenced, and Karen launched into a tirade against the Treehouse menace, painting a dystopian picture of a neighborhood overrun by unruly children and collapsing structures. She spoke of plummeting property values, increased liability, and the imminent destruction of suburban civilization as we knew it. When she finished, I rose to my feet, my camping gear rustling dramatically. I channeled my inner treehouse warrior, the spirit of defiance burning in my eyes. I spoke of the joy of childhood, the importance of imagination, and the value of community. I spoke of the laughter I'd heard echoing from the treehouses, the friendships that had been forged, the memories that had been made. "These treehouses," I declared, my voice ringing through the room, "are not just structures of wood and nails. They are symbols of hope, of creativity, of the human spirit's refusal to be confined by petty rules and regulations." I finished my speech to thunderous applause. The residents, inspired by my words and their own newfound sense of freedom, rose to their feet, chanting, "Treehouses, treehouses, treehouses." Karen's face was a mask of defeat. She tried to call for a vote, but it was too late. The HOA members, swayed by my arguments and the overwhelming support from the residents, voted against the ban. Instead, they proposed a new set of guidelines, allowing backyard structures as long as they met certain safety and aesthetic standards. The room erupted in cheers. Karen, defeated and humiliated, stormed out of the meeting, her dreams of a perfectly uniform neighborhood shattered. "Looks like the HOA's getting a taste of their own medicine," I chuckled, raising my "I Heart My Treehouse" mug in a toast. It's poetic justice, served with a side of irony. The battle was over, and we had won. The treehouses would stay, a testament to our collective defiance and the enduring power of the human spirit. And Karen? Well, let's just say she wouldn't be bothering us about porch swings or treehouses anytime soon.